Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Miami-Dade County has a budget of nearly $13 billion. But when you take out the expenses for capital projects and other debt obligations, the operating budget is about $3.5 billion. Still a lot of money. But Dade County is now facing a crisis. They entered this budget cycle with a $400 million shortfall. Part of that is the added cost of an independent sheriff, property appraiser, election supervisor, and tax collector. Each of those offices is now run by a politician, and they are all looking to create their own fiefdoms. But there are other problems as well. Under Mayor Danielle Levine-Cava, local government just got bigger. She created new positions, new offices, new initiatives. And while the federal government was sending millions in stimulus dollars during the pandemic, that gravy train is over. So how will this affect services, and what is likely to happen when commissioners vote on the budget next month? To get a better sense of where we are, I spoke to County Commissioner Raquel Regalado, who is chair of the Commission's Appropriations Committee. And she sees this crisis as actually an opportunity to shrink government.
Well, when you have plenty of funding, people don't want to make changes to the government, and it has a tendency to grow into that funding. So never waste a crisis. This is an opportunity to right-size this government and really focus on core services. This is a regional government that should be providing core services. We should be making those services better. So we need to reduce all these extra things that were created during the pandemic and really focus on using our residents' money wisely and providing them the best service.
So you think government over the last 4 or 5 years in Miami-Dade County has gotten too big? Can you give me some examples?
It's grown exponentially. We had the Innovation Authority that was created. We had the heat officer. We had the one water officer. We had the bay officer. We had all these different outreach programs. You know, I was the one that worked on the evictions program during the pandemic, but I don't understand why we're still doing that if we don't have funding to help people. The eviction program made sense because we had rent money through ERAP, but now what, we're just paying for an attorney. So all these things have to be reduced, and we need to focus on fixing streets, picking up trash, you know, fixing the sidewalks, getting the transit to run on time, and the basic services that we provide for our residents.
There are going to be some changes to services under this proposed budget. Can you give me an idea of whether or not they are actual changes to service or fee increases for services? And how are you weighing those?
So this proposed budget had more fee increases than anything. We've been able to reduce them. So for example, the budget proposed a 6% fee increase for water. We've gotten that down to 4%, and I hope to reduce it further. It proposed a 3% fee increase for solid waste. We've gotten that down to 1%, and I'm doing my best to reduce that even further. Under this budget, the mayor is proposing raising the fees to ride the bus, the Metro bus, from $225 to $275, same thing for Metro Rail, and increasing the fee for STS, the service for disabled folks, from $3.50 to $4 a ride, while also keeping Metro Mover for free. You have a different view as to what should happen here. Give me your sense for what should happen with these fees and whether or not the raising the bus fee and the Metro Rail fee and the STS fee is appropriate. So I don't think that we should raise any fees at this moment. I think we have to look at our entire transit system. We can't have one that's partially subsidized and one that's completely subsidized. So what I've discussed is charging for the mover so that everything is partially subsidized. And given the amount of people that use the mover, that would actually fill the gap that she's trying to fill right now. There's also other projects that are in the planning phase that we've lost funding for, where we could use that PTP money to fill that gap. This is not the moment to raise fees on transit. People are using transit more now than ever, not because they want to, but because they have to. So why are we going to raise the fees on the people who can pay the less, right? Instead of just making it equal so that everybody has to pay, and then moving forward, figuring out which part of the SMART plan we're going to put a pin in because we don't have funding.
You know, I understand, for instance, that the sheriff is not happy with her current budget, that she's asking for more dollars. And I understand that. I understand that as the head of a new agency, that's an independent agency, that she wants the most for her department. But I gotta tell you, I was put off a bit when I heard her start talking about how if the county commission doesn't give her everything she wants, that she considers it defunding the police. Anything less is defunding the police. That's what she said. How do you respond to that sort of rhetoric?
Well, look, she's standing up a new police force, and there's a lot of requirements that she has to live with that this board approved. So she was kind of handed a bunch of contracts and a bunch of responsibilities, and she's responding to that. I think she has been thoughtful in some of her decisions. For example, she decided not to change all the uniforms. She had everybody keep the brown, and they just changed the patches. The changing of the uniforms would have cost us a few $1,000,000. So she has tried to reduce things. She's pushed out the rebranding of the cars and pushed that into the future. She's not really working on her capital plan. Her main focus right now is the police academies. The administration believes that she cannot stand up as many police academies as she wants. She wants to try to do it. But in this last meeting, we were talking about the money that we found recently. The last $30 million, $36 million that we found, 10 million of that is from the sheriff. So we swept her last budget. And one of the things we're talking about is, we should give her back those 10 million, right? So that we can now give her more money to stand up those academies and look at the mid-year and see what we can do. So those are negotiations that we're having with her. But look, the first time we have a sheriff. I mean, in the past, the mayor was the sheriff and there was this back and forth. I think we're in a unique situation, and I think there is cost savings at jails that can be passed off to the sheriff.
There are a lot of positions that you talked about earlier, that how the government had sort of grown, whether it was the chief heat officer, the chief water officer, the Office of New Americans, the Office of Neighborhood Safety. The mayor created all of these entities. I think you referred to them as Power Rangers. Was that a mistake? I mean, did this administration, did the current mayor get so caught up in the federal dollars that were flowing during COVID that she didn't understand that at some point that money was going to stop coming in?
I think that there were hopes that the Biden administration would continue some of that. And there was a lot of talk about that at the time. We got a lot of money, and there were a lot of promises about different grants and different programmings, and a lot of nonprofits and organizations that really looked to the county for funding when these things were happening. We spent a lot of money on outreach. One of the things that I mentioned, in our meeting is right now, in the last budget year, the county spent $14 million on advertising and outreach. That is an absurd amount of money. And it's not just for outreach, it really is branding. These are vanity projects, right? We don't need to remind people to drink water. We don't need to tell them that water is life. These are ridiculous things. And I don't think that that's something that we should be focused on. But that was kind of the moment. And I think it spread way beyond 2022. But even in this budget, we're still using ARPA funds. This is our last sweep of that ARPA money. That's how much money the county was given. And the growth, I think, really empowered people to create these things. And some of them were lovely ideas. But again, from a fiscal perspective, not the best investment of our money.
There are a lot of people who are looking at these budget holes right now and thinking to themselves, why are we giving any money to the World Cup, to FIFA, to come to Miami in 2 years or a year and a half? Why are we spending tens of $millions on a $1 billion enterprise like FIFA?
That's fair. But FIFA was an application. Carlos Jimenez applied with that commission to have FIFA come here and committed this money. At a minimum, we have to provide the funding for police and fire, because when those games come here, what we can't have is a series of tragedies. Where we can reduce the amount that we're giving them is on the parties and on the different events. And that's one of the things that's being considered. But it is a contractual agreement. And that's one of the things that we have to grapple with, because they're coming and they're going to need a certain amount of wraparound services for those events to be successful.
The governor has been talking about trying to go in and bring DOGE cuts to different cities and counties. He's already working in Broward. There are those who believe that he should do something in Miami-Dade. What's your view?
I think the county should be doing this work. I mean, the governor's office has been asking all the counties for documentation. A lot of what they've been asking us for doesn't exist. So we would have to create some of these things. Right now, they're looking at our procurement documents and they're going to find a lot of things that they don't agree with. For example, living wage, which the state doesn't agree with, right? Our headquarters and the special benefits that we give to businesses that are headquartered here. So a lot of these are policy decisions that the county commission makes. But if the governor wants to come and audit the county, so be it. You know, we've been working on streamlining and reducing costs. And at this point, we'll take any and all suggestions because we all want what's best for Miami-Dade County. We may not agree with the politics of it, but I think we all at the end want transparency and accountability.
Let's take a step back for a second, because my next question sort of goes to the issue I was getting at before, which is, you know, the role that Dade County can play in terms of providing some level of a social safety net. We are seeing cuts at the federal level, we're seeing cuts at the state level, particularly to programs that help the poor among us. You know, whether it's food programs, home delivery, meal programs, things like that. I know that in the budget initially, a lot of those CBOs and others were cut. I think some of that money is being restored on a one-time basis.
Yes.
You know, what is where is this going to head? And you know, it seems to me like, particularly in the issue of food and meals, that the need is growing, and yet the services are being confined more and more, not just at the county level, but at the federal and state level as well.
Agree. So one of the things that we talked about at our meeting was to really change the way that we deal with CBOs. What I asked the board to consider was the return on investment and a system similar to what the Children's Trust has, a 5-year funding model that gives them more predictability, but that also requires them to have metrics and to have accountability, right? Because we have a lot of CBOs. I don't think the board should be choosing between which CBO is better. Like, how do you choose between disabled children and the elderly, you know, sex trafficking or food programs? Like, that's not a conversation that we want to have. But I do think that we need to focus on the ones that got the grants. I think the grant applicants are very different than the other CBOs, and we should move towards everyone having a grant style application. We did talk about finding a permanent funding source. Some commissioners mentioned adding a fee to our contracts. That's only going to make what we do more expensive. So that ends up coming from the general fund anyway. I think that we should consider different options and allocating within the existing general fund, but funding it in a way where maybe you get funding 1 year and not another year, but you get it in year 3, right? And educating them on how to work around that funding mechanism.
When we come back, slavery. Was it really so terrible? The answer is yes, and I'll talk to historian and author Marvin Dunn about the efforts by those on the right to try and whitewash American history. Stay with us. Welcome back. So slavery is in the news again. That's not something I'd expected to cover when the week began, and yet here we are. It started when Jillian Michaels, a MAGA influencer and former coach on The Biggest Loser, went on CNN and said this.
You cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you
tie
slavery, let's talk about the fact.
Slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
Donald Trump followed with a post on Truth Social decrying woke museums. He wrote the Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how terrible our country is and how bad slavery was. He's now ordered review of all exhibits. To try and make sense of what is happening, I spoke to historian and author Marvin Dunn, and I began by asking for his reaction to the president's comments.
This president said and done many things that offend me. This one hurt. This one hurt because it says we don't care about the suffering you people went through. Uh, we don't want to hear about the bad parts of your experience as a people. And that's hurtful. It may be intentionally hurtful, but I think many Black people will respond the same way as I do. They're going to have a white person or white people go through a Black museum and decide what stays and what goes. That's ludicrous. What will they do with the Native American Museum? Decide what comes and goes, what goes out of that museum as well. This is a dangerous, dangerous turn that America needs to be prepared for this, Jim. And I'll tell you, I think the larger picture, if you look at what Project 2025 is trying to do, have American history taught only the good parts. American our fathers were perfect men. Teach only those things about our founders. And Thomas Jefferson owned 600 enslaved people. So it's an attempt to wash out American history, take out all of the uncomfortable parts, and excuse historical pain that cannot be excused. It's a moral injustice of what we see happening with this president.
We've seen this here in Florida. We witnessed this, with the teaching and the issues surrounding the AP courses, the advanced placement courses for high school students, and the effort to try to, this attack on woke, whatever that means now. And Ron DeSantis made this an integral part of his campaign going forward when he ran for president. And just this idea that this resonates somehow and can be used to sort of create this feeling of like whites have it bad because of the attempt to rectify the sins of the past.
When in fact, white society improved and became enriched because of slavery. I don't want to go into all that. I think we know that enslaved people paid a great deal of the price of the growth of this country. But what worries me is the attempt to make America something that it was not. And listen, I agree with the president about one thing. This is a great country. I love my country. But you can't just dismiss those things that were bad and only look at what was good. But that's where this administration, that's where this historical moment is. With Project 2025, infiltrating education. If you look at an 8th grade history book in Florida schools today, they are absolutely an embarrassment. I'm writing a history book for middle school kids on Black Florida history because of the way Florida textbooks today reflect the American history in the way that the right wing wants it reflected. So it's unfair to the students. They're not learning their real history.
One of the issues that I see is this effort to redefine slavery as not being that bad. We saw this in Florida when we talked about how there was some wanting to teach the idea that there were certain skills that were achieved for African Americans as a result of slavery, and that we can't always look at the worst parts of slavery. We have to find the good in slavery as well, as if there is such a thing. What's your reaction to that?
There was no good in slavery. If you ran away, they cut your foot off. A white man could sleep with your wife anytime he chose to do so. They could sell your children. You never see them again. So it wasn't so bad. It was terrible. And it was absolutely inhumane what happened in slavery. So when people try to say it wasn't so bad and all white folks didn't own slaves and what have you, white America benefited from slavery. And to try to minimize the damage that had on Black people is an injustice of the first order.
Look, this racial divide that we've seen that Donald Trump and others have used to sort of create a wedge, even to the extent that we're seeing what he's doing in Washington, D.C. right now, in terms of mobilizing the National Guard, sending federal officers on the streets heavily armed.
Black cities into cities led by black politicians.
That was my point. That's not coincidental that you see this as him targeting cities of large African American populations or led by African Americans.
It was a part of the right's attempt to paint Black America as dangerous, violent, and must be controlled by military forces. That's what they're trying to paint. And we know that crime in cities are going down. incredibly so. And yet they paint this picture of Black people as dangerous, must be controlled by military forces. It's ridiculous and hurtful to the Black community. And I think you're going to see resistance to this in these cities that they're now trying this tactic on.
You know, it's the idea of creating the other, fear of the other. It was undocumented folks, illegal immigrants into this country, creating a fear surrounding them. They're all part of a gang. They're all dangerous. They're all out to hurt people, to steal from people. Now it's targeting inner cities, and going after that population. This is not, it seems to me, as a country, we're becoming more fractured, and those fault lines are being used to try to create something that isn't really there.
But Jim, that's what the Nazis did. That's what they did with the Jews. They were the other. They were the downfall of the society. Blame them. And then society turns on those others that need to be kicked out because they're bringing down the society. That's a overused tactic that the right has used going back even before Hitler. So this is not new, this targeting of someone as being the other. Now it's immigrants. They're so violent, so dangerous, so threatful to American society, we can put them in cages in Alligator Alcatraz and basically forget about them. Once you define people as outside of society, then you can really do almost anything to them.
You're still teaching history, not formally in classrooms, but you're doing a series of lectures around what you call a teaching tree at FIU, at FAMU. You're looking to do it at New College. Explain to me what this is and what the purpose of it is.
Well, Jim, the idea of teaching around a tree comes to us from Africa. In Africa, elders sat around the tree and passed on their history. That came to us through slavery. That was a part of African culture. And in Black America, every Black American city I know of has a tree, or even more than one tree, where Black men tend to come together and teach and have fun and what have you. And my sense was that at FIU now, especially in this historical moment where our history is being suppressed on the campus, that there should be a tree, a place where our history can be taught without being filtered by anybody else. And I did that without asking permission, Jim. I'm not asking FIU for permission to teach my history. It's a public university, public land. So we started teaching, I started teaching, and people started coming. And from time to time, we will have those lectures and those events under that tree. And we're going to spread that concept to other cities, other universities as well, starting with New College in a few months and FSU and others. We need to have that teaching option available to students and faculty who want to come and listen to a free discussion about our history.
Give me a sense for what your last one was. And I know you were mentioning to me that there could be one coming up where you also bring the Miccosukee in and talk about some of the shared history there.
I want to bring in young people from the Miccosukee tribe and young people from Black and white and Hispanic Miami to come together under that tree to talk about our shared history. We don't know anything about the Miccosukee. I don't really know very much about them. We need to bring our young people together in an environment that's safe and have them discuss our common goals and aspirations. So I'm talking with elders at the Miccosukee tribe to ask if we can move ahead with having this kind of conversation with our young people.
We'll be right back. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. Oh, I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.